In today's video, we are going back to the basics. How do you develop your ability to communicate fluently in English? How do you get to a place where you can coherently think something through in your mind and actually communicate it in a way that people will understand you? As you know, I have a group that I mentor on WhatsApp, and sometimes when I'm on the run, I just record audio messages and I send them. And one thing that has consistently come up is, how am I able to actually how have I developed that ability to communicate well in English? I was born in Zimbabwe. Shona is my first language. I never learned English in like kindergarten and stuff like that. I have actually managed to become fluent and managed to become more conversant over the years. And yesterday someone came to my inbox and they were asking me about how to write effectively, how to communicate their ideas effectively, and it hit me that this is actually a pressure point for a lot of people. How do you develop your English? How do you develop your ability to communicate and write in English? That is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Petronella Mnenja. I'm an author, I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker. My book, From Gokwe to Oxford, The Girl Who Dared to Dream, is available on Amazon. Please do get a copy. If you're in Zimbabwe, you can get a copy from Enough Bookshop, or you can text me and I can have a book delivered to you wherever you are. So let's get into today's business. How do you develop the ability to speak English fluently? And sometimes it's not a question of whether you learned it at school or not. It's not a question of whether you wrote assignments in English or not. Sometimes it's a confidence issue, do you know? So we're going to walk through some of those practical steps that will actually give you the confidence and that will actually make you a very effective and articulate communicator. The first one is everything on your body, in your mind, everything that makes you up as a human being is muscle. And if you're going to strengthen it, if you're going to make it serve you better, then you have to do what you do to muscles: train. So if you want to develop your ability to communicate well, train. And how do you train? Read. This is very, very, very important. You cannot give out what you don't have on the inside. You cannot communicate well something that you do not know about yourself. You cannot share ideas that you haven't thought about already. You cannot give to people what you don't have. So before you even think of doing anything else, you teach your mind. So if you do something every day, if you interact with something every day, it rubs off in everything that you do. So one thing that I love doing, I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to podcasts every other day. And one thing that I've realized is there are some words and phrases that I've picked up that I didn't use to say maybe 4 years ago, maybe last year, but that I've actually gotten the ability to speak of more. So if you want to actually develop your ability to communicate in English, then read, invest in reading. And this may not be, maybe you are like me. I don't particularly know how to read novels. I just never learned how to do it outside of school. So I may not read a novel, but I'm going to read books on facts. I'm going to read books on mindset. I'm going to read books on growth and success and personal development. I have an entire collection of such books. So I'm going to read, and each time you read something, you not only learn about that particular subject, you actually learn as well the process of the author, how the author thinks through ideas and how they communicate them through words. So the more you interact with different types of literature, the more your vocabulary widens. So you will realize that sometimes it will just work up one day and it will just click that you're now very conversant, that you're now very you're now confident communicating in that particular thing. So that's the first thing. Your brain is your muscle. Like everything on you is a muscle, and if you're going to develop it in a way that serves you, then you are going to have to train the muscle. Train. So read. Start with a newspaper. We have social media. So how about you stop following those gossips? How about you stop following the trends? Who is dating who is wearing what? How about you stop doing that and you start actually invest in something that adds value? So how about you subscribe to a newsletter, news channel, to a news broadcasting agency, and instead of watching the video updates, you actually sit down and you read the articles that they've written. Because with time, those things that you read, the more you read them, the more they solidify in your brain, the more you understand the meaning. And words are contextual. They mean different things in different contexts. And the more you see them in different contexts, the more they make sense to you and the more you can adopt them and add them to your own vocabulary. So read. That way you expand your vocabulary, that way you expand your knowledge, and you train the brain, you train the muscles in your brain. And the second one, which is slightly related but not necessarily the first one, is don't feed your brain garbage. Okay, and this is an important one. One thing that I've learned about people in social media is people want to be entertained more than they want to be educated. So people would rather spend 5 hours, watch someone rant on social media, talk about their marital problems, talk about their dysfunctional problems, talk about everything that is wrong with their lives, and they will literally put everything on hold for 5 hours to listen to that nonsense, but they would never in a day invest that same amount of time in learning a skill. And what happens is what you feed your subconscious mind slowly drizzles back into your conscious mind. So you may not know that you're feeding your brain garbage when you're watching those things, but what happens is when you find yourself in situations, how our mind works is when you read something, when you learn something, it may not necessarily look like it's working, but your brain is absorbing. And when you find yourself in a particular situation where you need to rely on those skills, your brain has a way of bringing those back things to you, which is why sometimes you're in an exam, you've read the entire night before, you were confident with your concepts. And you get to the exam hall and you're like, oh my God, what's the answer? I don't know. You're freaking out. But the moment you sit down and you see a question, your mind will start going back to those different places and picking those answers to those particular questions because you read about it. So the same way that mechanism works in helping you remember answers to an exam is the same way that mechanism works in reminding you rubbish in situations where you have to communicate. So if you spend your whole of yesterday watching that lady, that person rant on social media or do whatever, if you get into a situation where you're supposed to communicate, your brain is going to try and find reservoirs of knowledge that can inform you in your communication, that particular knowledge, and the information bank that you have is going to be that garbage, and that's not going to edify you or bring you skills or improve you in any way. So for this reason, if you want to learn to communicate, I always say this, it's find people that speak the way you want to speak. Find someone that speaks the way you want to speak. I have 5 people that I absolutely love how they speak. I love how they speak, how they synthesize ideas, how they think through things, how they engage with the audience. I absolutely love them. And I'm not necessarily there yet, but every day I'm intentional. So on average, a day, I won't listen to all of them. Maybe I'll listen to 1 or 2 of them. But at any given time, I'm interacting with them. I'm interacting with what edifies me, with what brings value to me. I'm interacting with that knowledge. I'm building my knowledge. And I'm a better speaker. If you watch the videos that I did a few years back and the videos that I'm doing now, you can see that there is hints and lessons and indications of growth. So if you want to actually grow and become more competent, more eloquent, and more articulate, then be intentional with what you expose your eyes to, your mind to. You can't honestly consume garbage 24/7 and then miraculously expect to communicate well. You can't do that. What you put in is what you give out. Remember the first thing that I said, you can't give out what you don't have on the inside. And what you have on the inside is a function of what you put in. So be deliberate and be intentional in paying attention to the things that you are exposing your mind to. What are you watching? What are you exposing your mind to? Think about that, and that way you would quirk and adjust your habits accordingly in a way that actually aligns you to your development goals, to the goals that you want to achieve. And the third one, this one is tacky. This one is tacky because I know people have always thrown it around, like literally everywhere you go, people will actually tell you to do it, but no one actually ever did it. And I feel like it's something that you actually have to do if you're going to improve your language. Learn a new word every day. Learn a new word every day. And I feel like it's the thing about this is it's in stages. Is that there's a stage where you literally learn a new word every day, and then the more you read, you learn new phrases. And the more you read, you learn the how the malleability of English is a language, and how you can literally say anything in different contexts and stuff like that. So the starting point is learn a new word every day. Do you know? And the thing about as well about the world that we're living in is language is quickly evolving. Do you know? There are a lot of terms coming in. It might be hard to keep up with those, but learn a new word and its definition in a day. Actually be intentional. If you cannot read it in an article, then buy a dictionary. Do you know? Invest in something that actually adds to your knowledge. So broadly, when you interact with articles and news and stuff like that, you were building this abstract knowledge of your mind. But when it comes to like those basic skills, learn a new word every day. What is the different word? How do you say something differently? Do you know? So it's more or less similes. What is the alternative to this? How could I say this statement differently? How could I say this word differently? What does this word mean in this context? So make sure that you learn something every day. And this is hard, and this requires consistency, and unless and until you are ready to actually improve, you won't be able to do it. And you always keep asking people, how do I speak in English? How do I do this? Because you are expecting someone to give you a magic potion or a magic Alexa or something to just say abracadabra. You can't do that. It's a painstaking process that takes time, that you may not be able to do every day. But if you are loyal to it, and if you constantly do what you're supposed to do, then I promise you will be doing well in adding value to yourself. And the last one is communicate more in English. Okay? And I remember when we were growing up in primary school, they used to have this thing where it would be called speaking English. So you will be in a class, and the entire class is expected to speak in English for that entire day, that entire lesson or whatever. And you constantly had, if someone didn't speak in English, their name would be written down, and I don't know what would happen, but you had like those speaking English. And I remember at home, even with my sisters, would have the thing where we're like, speaking English, we're speaking in English only. It sounds mundane, it sounds silly, but it actually helps, because familiarity makes things easier. If you start performing a task today, it's going to be harder. If you perform it tomorrow, it's going to be less hard. If you perform it the day after tomorrow, it's going to be less hard. And the more you do it every other day, it becomes simpler and simpler and simpler. So find a person that you actually can speak to in English. Practice. Everyone who has done something has actually had to practice. Some of my biggest speeches I have told myself in the mirror. Some of the best deliveries that I've done it to myself in the mirror, and I'm proud of it. And I actually keep growing. I actually recite interviews, and because that's the thing, you always keep growing, isn't it? And if you don't have anyone to talk to yourself. When you're working at home, interview yourself, actually ask yourself things, and actually read, and actually practice speaking in English. And the common thread in this video, if you've noticed, is actually do something, actually be intentional. Your ability to learn is a muscle. Your ability to absorb knowledge is a muscle. Your ability to do anything is a muscle. And just because you think you want to do something, it's not going to magically appear. You have to do some of those things that you consider to be silly. Learning requires you to sometimes possess the naivety of a child, doing what you're supposed to do and not thinking too hard about it. So learning a new word, learn that new word, speak in English constantly, expose your mind to things that actually make sense, that build it. Because if you expose your mind to something, it adopts it, it assimilates it, and it will start bringing it back to you in small doses, in adequate circumstances. So that's it from me today, guys. If you want to develop your ability to speak articulately, confidently, coherently, then the key takeaway is practice. Read newspapers, read books, read news articles, read and expose your mind to things that actually help you to grow. And learn a new word every day. It's so tacky, but it works. Actually learn a new word every day. And last but not least, find someone to actually speak in English with. If you are in one of my WhatsApp groups and you happen to get me on a good day, give me a call and talk to me in English. Because here's the thing, we get good at anything if we keep doing it consistently, deliberately, and intentionally. That's it from me today, guys. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share this video.